Well, welcome everybody. My name is Sparkle Watts, and I am just electrified. I don't even know the right word to express how I feel about being here today, but I'm overly satisfied and eager for more, as we were just saying earlier. Thank you so much for joining me, and this is the Alignment Effect. So today I am here with Asia K and absolutely want to allow her to introduce herself and express what she really does. And then we are going to dive into it and really talk today about quantum wealth and how alignment is the prerequisite for that. And so, Asia.
Thank you very much, Sparkle. My name is Asia K. Asia Kirkendall, for those who are curious on how to pronounce that.
Say the whole thing.
Kirkendall.
Yeah.
Man, electrified. I love that word. So quantum wealth, essentially the alignment comes from realizing when we talk about personal finance and money goals and getting to the bag, we have to really understand what it is we're asking for when we're asking for these things. Because I feel like a lot of people, by design, how society has designed it, they have us thinking about money in a certain way that does not serve us. And so with the quantum wealth, the whole mission there is to really update the programming we have that runs through our brains and our operating systems to redefine how we're looking at money so that we actually feel peaceful, confident, and excited about all the goals that we're working towards when it comes to our finance.
Absolutely. And that's a huge part of why I'm so excited you're here today. And in addition, why you were leading the call yesterday that we had. I loved the conversation around helping people understand that, if they have these ideas about money or these beliefs around money, that it's bad or that it has some sort of negative connotation, that it's going to be challenging for them to bring that into their life when they're actually seeking like a comfortable life, a happy life, things that are on a different frequency than their current idea of money. And I'm a huge advocate for like reminding people that you're going to have a really hard time becoming something that you believe is bad, right? Especially because most of the things that you want and that you go after are because in the pursuit of good. And so I just really appreciated that part of the conversation, helping people understand that like when you can't think debt is bad, money is bad, the rich are bad, and then somehow also want what they have.
Something that's been coming crystal clear, because I've been doing this research, what ultimately led to the quantum wealth theory since 2017 and, sharing it since 2021. And me sharing it is still part of like the research phase because every person is unique and individual. So I'm continuously learning every time I share it and then hear somebody else's reflection on what that meant to them. And so what's been coming clear to me as of late is the idea, it's all about what you call alignment. In neuroscience terms, they call that coherence. And so the coherence, what needs to be in coherence with each other is our brain, our hearts, and our actions, say hands and feet. And so when you're not in coherence, when your brain has the plans to make more money, but your heart believes because of your past programming or what you just heard and maybe repeated, but never really questioned, like debt is bad, the rich, they had to scam somebody to get there. When you have these disconnect or these conflicting priorities, you're not going to get anywhere. It's like being on the gas and the brake at the same time in a vehicle.
Right.
And so that's just how I'm thinking and how I'm feeling, making sure those are in coherence. But then the third piece with the action, that's where the magic comes in.
That is where the magic comes in. And I love that you taught me just now that what that's called scientifically, the coherence, because yes, what I do call the alignment, it has to do with the desire. It has to do with somebody having a desire and having a belief. Those are the two components that I'm speaking of every time I'm talking about come into alignment, because your desires and your beliefs have to match in order to bring something into your physical reality. And the challenge that a lot of people have is that they have these desires, right? I want $1 million. I want this much money every month or every year, but they have certain beliefs about what it takes to get that. And so one thing I tell a lot of people is I'm like, don't claim the experience of another as your own before you go through your own, right? We identify a goal, and then oftentimes we'll look at everybody who has already achieved that, and then we'll claim their experience. We claim their journey. It took them 5 years. It must take 5 years, right? And which is wrong, right? It's just wrong.
Plain wrong.
The time that it takes somebody to come into alignment with the desire is about the time that it takes them to close the vibrational gap between where they're currently at and where they want to be. It has nothing to do with a process or a program or a schooling or how long it takes to pass a test. It's all about how long is it going to take you to close the vibrational gap between what you currently believe and who you're currently being and where you want to be.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so I just love the coherence aspect because I'm like, absolutely. Like if you can master the alignment first and identify those beliefs that are out of alignment with what your desire is, you can bring those to the same place and then you can take action. I'm like, people like to take action before they get in alignment. And that's why you get outcomes that are out of alignment with where you're headed.
1000%.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you like the coherence, you're going to love
Give me more.
the observer effect.
I do love the observer effect. I actually am familiar with that.
I bet you are.
Tell us about it.
So in quantum physics, there's a few main principles that people talk about when they talk about creating your dream reality, working towards moving from point A to point B, from where you are to where you want to go. And so the observer effect is one of those popular ones. So I love that I have the space to talk about the observer effect in this way because I really get this opportunity. Okay.
In real time,
In real time, right now. It comes from the double slit experiment.
Yes.
So basically, first of all, quantum physics, that may sound like a whole lot going on, but when you break it down, what quantum physics means or what it studies is energy. At the fundamental, smallest level, the building blocks of every single thing in our universe is held together by energy. Whether there's physical particles of matter that we see or not, it comes down to energy. And so quantum physics studies energy at the smallest level, at the subatomic level. And when they call quantum, I think Einstein had a quote something about quantum physics being spooky math. Because when you get that small down to where you got these microscopes looking at atoms and the electrons, stuff at the quantum level doesn't behave in the same way they do in our regular 3D material world. So you're talking about regular physics, classic physics, you know, Newton dropped the apple based on the size, the weight, it would take this much time to fall to the ground. You can calculate that over and over. It makes sense. You could predict it. But quantum physics, when you study in matter and energy at this level, sometimes it does the exact opposite or things that don't make sense to classic physics form. It's crazy. So back to the double slit. This experiment, they have a wall, you know, standing up, and there's two slits, two openings or slits in this wall. And basically what they're doing is they're shooting particles that are like electrons, like at the subatomic level. You can't see this with the naked eye. They're shooting these particles through these double slits. And when it comes through the two slits, you would expect it on the background behind this wall that's standing, that it would show up on the background in the same pattern of the two slits that it went through.
Right.
And so what they realized is instead of having that pattern, it had a different pattern which told it that it wasn't behaving like particles, it was actually behaving like energy waves. And so they saw this pattern on the back wall that wasn't what they expected, so they put an observing tool right behind that double slit wall. And they started to observe exactly what the particles were doing when they came through the slits. And at the moment they started to observe these particles of light, that's what electrons are, they started to behave different and they ended up showing up on the back like they thought the first time. So what the observer effect tells us is the simple act of observing something can change the outcome that it has. So bringing it back all the way back to reality, what that means when you're talking about creating your dream life, every possibility for your life exists.
Yeah.
You talking about getting in alignment with the vibration or what you're desiring. Okay, you know what you desire, you know it exists. Once you observe that desired lifestyle, you observe the path that'll get you there, that alone will start to change your actions when you've gotten clear enough about that desire and you're intentional about it.
My favorite. I thank you for sharing that with me. I've heard it enough times to remember it, but not enough times to know. And when you said that to me the other day, we were talking and you mentioned it. You were like, yeah, like the observer effect. And it brought that. I had a moment when you said that because I was like, wow, if you haven't seen like a live demonstration of the observer effect, we'll put it in. But please watch and actually see the visual representation because to me, that is magic. Like what you're describing is magic. How the energy is behaving in a different way simply out of being observed ties exactly into what I am always sharing and preaching about focus and the power of your focus. And where your focus goes, your energy flows, right, is what I'm always saying. And so if you're focused or identifying that reality, like you said, it does impact naturally, subconsciously, the behavior that you start to demonstrate leading you to the outcome that is truly desired.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I love the observer effect. Thank you for educating us on that. I'm loving that. A couple of prompts for us if we wanted to talk about. One was like what quantum wealth means to you and how do you help people become an energetic match for it?
Love the question because at the heart of quantum wealth, there's a couple things at the heart of it. There's about, I'm gonna have to pull them out, 3 pillars. And one of the main ones is realizing that everybody has a different version of what wealth and success means to them. So quantum wealth theory, a part of that theory is understanding that people, when they say they have financial goals, they want more money, they don't want more green paper or digits on their bank account screen. What they really want is a certain feeling or these experiences that they desire. And so understanding, we've all grew up in a society and have been programmed externally to some certain extent. You might not be surprised to know that not everybody is having these conversations to really come back to the drawing board to decide what we truly desire as unique individuals, not what they told me the American dream looks like, what's supposed to bring me success if you just check these boxes.
Right.
Some people have been fortunate or unfortunate enough to go through that to realize, you know what, that did not do what I thought it was going to do.
Right.
And so with the quantum wealth, realizing that what everybody wants is unique. Some people want to live in the city, in the high rise with no car, paying however much for rent without the responsibility of home ownership. Some people want to be in the burbs, with their peace and quiet and some land. And so it's just about figuring out what you want and then painting that picture. Now we get to the play and the fun.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about money, there's a taboo that comes with it. There's a heaviness sometimes. There's at least some weight, some connotation. And so if we understand that and respect that, then we're going to make sure we're being intentional about how we're even bringing up these topics with people.
Yeah.
And so a part of that with our workshops that we host includes a immersive, playful, fun kind of experience that allows people to start off with designing that lifestyle. We call it the North Star vision.
I like that.
So it's 5 years into the future. If you were to wake up and we're able to spend every hour of the day doing exactly what you wanted to do because you did not need to trade time to make money to maintain your basic needs, that's all taken care of. So now you're waking up 5 years from now, what are you doing every day? What do you desire? What would you do if money wasn't an object? And then specifically getting back to the neuroscience, our brain interprets data. That's what its job is to do. It's to interpret data. It's not biased. It's like, oh, that's not good for me. Let me not. It doesn't do that. And the data, where it gets its data from are our 5 senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. And so if we know how our brain works, machine, and processing this data 24/7, then we're going to use this machinery for our benefit, give it some new data to start processing this North Star vision. We're breaking that down into the data now. What does it taste like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? What does it look like? Paint that vision vivid enough so that your brain recognizes what it's searching for, what it's aligning with.
Yes.
Now it can recognize that in your day-to-day better because you've programmed it, your reticular activating system, to be on the hunt. That's what its job is to do.
Yes, and if you don't ask the question, then how are you going to know when you see the answer?
You're not going to know.
Right.
And so that's what we do in the funnest way possible. Talking about high school and college students, trying to make sure I'm with the times. It was fun for me, ain't always fun for them. I know. I'm learning.
I love the North Star vision, right? I really, really love that. And when you say it, a lot of people I'm sure have never even thought about that. A lot of people like to say, like, where do you want to be in 5 years, right? So I'm sure a lot of people have been asked that question. I hate that question kind of, but what you're doing is something different. Like, no, in 5 years, paint the picture of what it looks like to live the lifestyle that you dream of living and be who you want to be. Now, what does that taste, touch? What does that feel like, right? And I love that. I always encourage my community to do a daily practice of A to B, which is a strategy that I learned from Coach Burt, where you start every day with A to B, saying A is where I currently am, B is where I'm looking to go, and in the middle, you're doing who are the people who can connect, who can bridge that gap, right? You're writing the who. After A to B, I have you do what I call square up. Okay, someone taught me this about a year or two ago, a really wealthy guy. And so I was like, if he's doing that every day, I'm going to do that every day.
Mhm.
So you do A to B first.
Mhm.
Okay, this is where I'm at. This is where I want to go. And here's who can help me get there.
Mhm.
And then below it, you square up. And square up is you draw a square, you split it into 4 quadrants, and you write today, this week, this month, this year. And I try to put 3 things in each quadrant and just outline for myself, what am I doing to get me to that, not even necessarily to that year goal, but what am I doing today? What are the 3 things that are prioritized? The week, the month, the year.
Yeah.
And same thing that you just shared, right? What that's doing is basically beginning your day by programming your subconscious to ask questions so you can look for the answer.
Yes.
When you're like, oh, I know my goals, and you just wake up, roll out of bed, and you get on your way, you do know your goals. But when you flesh them out and you say, well, this is where I am at, and who do I need? Maybe I need someone who knows about money, so an accountant, or maybe a coach, right? And you identify that and you actually say that to yourself. As you move, you start subconsciously asking questions to a stranger that maybe you wouldn't have asked before, that helps you learn they are who you need, or they know who you need. So I definitely resonate with that, like training, reprogramming your subconscious to do the work for you.
Yeah. And something we've mentioned a few times is this subconscious.
Yeah.
At some point, we're going to have to dive into it.
The subconscious? I'm all about the subconscious, because that's where a lot of limiting beliefs lie. And that's also what you can train to actually be your support system. You can, right? Like that's your kind of your like hidden tool, your hidden weapon, where you can actually like train your subconscious to be that friend that you didn't even expect to have a support for you or be there to catch you.
Yeah. So the analogy that we'll get to in the part 2, like, I train the beast, because talking about the idea that there's 3 different layers to ourself that sometimes are conflicting. You have your conscious mind, you have your emotional mind, then you have your subconscious mind, which is the instincts, it's what's going to seek pleasure, avoid pain. It wants the chocolate cake, even though you consciously decided it was time for the summer bod for real this time. And so the idea of training the beast, like you said, to work for you, if we know our subconscious mind is driving 90% of our daily decisions, instead of trying to go against that power force that's coming in every single day, every morning, it's best to use that same power, reprogram it, train it to work for you, and now have that same train going in the direction you actually want to go in.
Yes. And like we haven't, I don't think, talked about yet, I also like to include ego in this conversation, because recently had my very first ego death, and it was painful and necessary. And what I learned through that was how much my ego was impacting, like actually like playing a part in my life, because I didn't know how to quiet my ego. And I didn't understand that my ego actually, the best way to say it is, someone shared with me that you got your past, your present, and your now. And if I'm sure you're like me, we believe all is one. But our ego cannot manifest into the future. Our ego lives in our past. And I move through my life a lot, and I tell people, right, I often don't remember the past, and it's somewhat intentional, because I don't believe that that's where my power lies. And so, and people are always like, but what about lessons? And what about things that are important? That will come with you.
I embody that.
You don't have to live there in order to take the message with you. In the now, when you go through something and you learn through it, you can't lose unless you don't learn. So take the lesson and move forward. But there's no need to put your now energy into a past moment, because your power is not there. And so through this ego death, what I learned was, and what I acknowledged was, wow, I have been basically observing in my now and allowing my ego to tell me what that experience is going to be like. And I think that the reason that happens is because when you observe something, you immediately, like you said, the brain collects the data, and then the ego tries to tell you what's going to happen based on what it has experienced. Right. So your ego's like, well, remember that person we met 3 years ago who had a story like this? Your story is going to be like that. And then the me now is believing that. And so I very quickly, once I acknowledge that, I'm like, okay, I've got to get into a space where I can actually tell my ego no more. You don't hold the reins, right? I hear you. I remember that, but it's not my experience. And so that acknowledgement of my ego and understanding that my ego can only live in the past, my ego actually cannot be in that next now that I'm manifesting, because ego is built off of the experience. And so I feel so empowered coming through that. And now when I'm moving through life and I'm like hearing that voice, I hear it.
That voice.
But I hear it separately now. I'm like, okay, I hear you. I know who you are. That's not your role anymore. But thanks for your input.
That is powerful. That visualization and just personifying the ego and taking it out of this future, because what that reminded me of, now we going just all the way there with the spirituality, is that source, the never ending, cannot be created nor destroyed,
Yeah.
God, universe, whatever you want to call it, source that we all come from, the inanimate objects on the earth, the animals, the humans, the birds, the clouds, the rain, the grass, the trees. That source is what does not have an ego. And that's what doesn't exist. Whoever creates it.
I can hear you're like, wait, and it all adds up.
It doesn't exist in the future.
Yeah.
So it's only from past experiences is this ego continuously developing itself and having its opinion and narration and commentary during the day-to-day. So when you're talking about who's observing the behavior and who's doing the behavior and who the ego is talking to.
Yeah.
It's like three different entities.
Yeah.
Circling around.
Yeah. And so I think just the acknowledgement, like always, acknowledgement is the most important step. And so I think just the acknowledgement of that can really help a person shift their entire life. Like, don't let your ego run it. Right? That's not who should be in charge. And maybe you've just been letting the wrong entity or the wrong part of you be in control most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah. And you're right. You're allowing an entity that lives in the past, a place that you don't want to be, control what manifests into your future.
Okay, and then of course, coming back to Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil.
Yes. Tell him, because I am still working through that read. But it's been recommended to me several times in the last couple of years.
So I think that's a good place. If you enjoyed this conversation, then Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil, when you listen to it on audiobook, they have it on YouTube, for free. They'll tell you in the introduction on how that book was written. The same time as Think and Grow Rich that everybody knows, but it wasn't released until 2011 because of how controversial it was. So for me, the theme that always comes out when we having these conversations about knowing what you want, being clear about it, and having the balls, to actually go after it and do it.
Yeah.
Or the ovaries, having that desire in your life and having the balls to go after it and do it. So Napoleon Hill says only 2% of people know their definite of purpose and are actually taking action towards it. And he's saying the rest of the 98% of people, the devil, who he describes as people who don't think for themselves, who let society, the schools, sometimes the religions think for them and tell them what to do, even the politics at this point. That's the devil's use and his tools that he used to keep 98% of people just drifting through life.
Right.
So there's 2% who know their definite of purpose. 98% of people are drifting.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to me.
I call that living by default, because we're all manifesting and you're always in alignment with something. Right. And so my message is always about what are you getting? What are you in alignment with? Where are you making your decisions from? Right. And how are you living? And so that's why my method is focused alignment and deliberate creation, because a lot of people are creating by default. They're just looking and observing and focusing on anything that comes their way. And then the manifestations come as a result of that. And so absolutely love that. I think we are in perfect timing for a close, and we'll definitely be back. Thank you so much, Asia. Every single conversation with you is power, like power and magic in the room. And like I've said a couple times this week, I would just show gratitude for, I'll say proud of myself for the people who I have become an energetic match to and been able to align with. And same proud of everyone in my circle and proud of you for doing the same and aligning with me and making magic.
Thank you, Sparkle. I mean, I feel like you pretty much closed it up well. You know what I'm saying? Also proud, honored to be here. It's only been 3 weeks?
I know.
I've done a lot of work as far as being super clear about getting this message out. And when we met, you were on stage, right across the way here. And the language that you used about alignment and desire and calibration, when you speak that language, you're going to attract exactly who you need to attract. So here we are.
Every single time. Thank you so much for joining us. If you can shout yourself out, where can we find you, and share your book as well, please?
Yes, Asia Kirkendall. You can find me on LinkedIn, first name, last name, Instagram, asiak.247, and Quantum Wealth Theory. The 3rd edition will be launching the end of July. So you can find those pre-order links in any of the places I just mentioned. I look forward to being back.
Absolutely. Okay, well, it's been a pleasure to have you. Again, my name is Sparkle Watts. I am your calibration specialist, here to help you get everything that you want through focused alignment and deliberate creation. You can find me online at Sparkle Watts Official. The Alignment Effect are there as well. So thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you again soon.